We are extremely excited to announce our new presenting sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. Everyone knows and loves their hotels and casinos, but now you can use the top-rated Hard Rock Bet sportsbook to place all your NFL bets this season. Hard Rock Bet is the only legal sportsbook in the state of Florida and is also available in Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado, with more states to come. You can also play on Hard Rock Bet's online casino if you are in New Jersey. As we gear up for the NFL season, sign up for Hard Rock Bet and make a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Head over to Hard Rock Bet, sign up, and make your first deposit today. Well, we stayed up to watch one of the greatest doubleheaders in Monday Night Football history. Said absolutely nobody ever. But doubleheaders, Monday night, even bad football is better than no football. So, heck, this could be June, July, April, May when we're complaining. So I'm not going to complain. But that was a rough offensive stretch in the second half by both Seattle and the Houston Texans. So we will talk about what we witnessed. I think JSN is officially becoming a star. You know, even as Darnold, didn't have the greatest game for his standards. It just, every time I watch him throw some of these darts on the outside, you go, God, what would Minnesota, what is Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison thinking? Is D'Amico, a lot of talk about Mike McDaniels, where he's going to end up as an offensive coordinator, even though he still has a head coaching job. But when that inevitably ends, I would wonder if D'Amico, who knows him really well, because that OC situation is not going well. And then the first game, couple takes. I actually have a transfer portal take in how it relates to Jahmyr Gibbs. Dan Campbell, say what you want. I don't think we talk enough how incredible he's resurrected the Lions. They're going to win 12, 13 games again. But he just nailed his defensive coordinator hire. And then a couple quick thoughts on Tampa. And then we'll just bang out a couple other quick things. Dre Greenlaw, crazy suspension I think I've ever seen. Looks like Brandon Graham is coming back to the Philadelphia Eagles. And did the Tennessee Titans draft the wrong quarterback? Because I saw a stat that's pretty impressive when it comes to the New York Giants. But before we dive into any football, specifically the Monday Night Doubleheader, I got to tell you about my friends. I got to tell you about my partners. The official ticketing app of this podcast. Do you want to go to one of these games? There had to be people in that Seattle crowd, and the place had to be rocking, thinking like, I'm going to go to a World Series game. We're going to play the Dodgers in the World Series. They were up 3-1. Then all of a sudden, I get a group text. I'm like, check out the score, because I wasn't even watching the game. I just assumed Seattle was going to win. Springer hits the home run. The Blue Jays, a little throwback to Joe Carter when I was a kid. Blue Jays, Dodgers. I don't think that was the World Series, but Dodgers are going to smoke them. But if you want to go to one of these games, college football, watching some of these SEC Big Ten environments, you live down in Southern California and you want to watch my guy Tim Skipper resurrecting the UCLA Bruins. The NBA, I actually think I'm recording this. If you live on the East Coast, it's opening night. NBA games, college basketball is right around the corner if it hasn't already started yet. So we're in full swing. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code JOHN, J-O-H-N, for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Being an offensive coordinator is obviously hard. It is not easy. All of us, whether you've worked in the NFL, whether you sell insurance, whether you just gamble a lot on football, we all can be very critical on our couch, powering down, a Gatorade and some popcorn. I'm no different than any of you. We all scream obscenities constantly when guys call bad plays. But the second half of that game, the Texans against Seattle is an all-time head scratcher. And I'm going to start with the winning team. Kubiak comes from a family that is all, when you say the Kubiaks, the Shanahans, all you think is running the ball. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and then pass it off that. And tonight, it felt like he was hell bent on proving Sam Darnold is like an MVP candidate, even up double digit points in the second half against, I don't know if they're the best defense. We can determine based on different metrics. They are easily one of the most talented defenses in the NFL. And their two strengths are rushing the passer and DB play. Derek Stingley is like a Deion Sanders, Darrell Revis level athlete. You're up big and you keep throwing the ball. It makes no sense. You got two good running backs. The only way, and this goes back to the DeMarcado play when the Titans came back. This goes back yesterday when the Giants imploded with Denver. The only way in a game like that, whether you have a big lead or you're playing an offense that's inept, they can come back, especially if there's 20 plus minutes on the clock left in the game. You have to give them a free possession. And Kubiak's calling these pass plays. I'd even go back to the touchdown that, almost was a safety, but then they fell on it, so it was a touchdown. It's like you are asking Sam Darnold to throw backed up in his own end zone. And you can blame Sam. He's doing like a 360 in the end zone. You can't turn your back in that moment. But what are you doing? Well, why are we outthinking the room here? Just run the ball. Honestly, the two offensive coordinators tonight were the polar opposites. One guy, run the ball. Run the ball, run the ball again, and run the ball again. And I thought all night Kubiak, and maybe it's Monday Night Football, you're trying to prove you're a star offensive coordinator. I don't know him personally. I know a lot of people that know him. They think really highly of him. Clearly, I think he's pretty talented. But I thought tonight he got really cute. You go to the first half, they are kicking the shit out of the Texans. 2 touchdowns immediately, 14-0. They're driving again. It's like you go up 21-0 against that offense, the game is over. And they are driving right down the field. They do not need to call trick plays. There is no trickeration needed. And he calls a double pass or a wide receiver pass, and Cooper Kupp throws an interception. And I thought it just bled right into the second half of that should have been a game that his dad or the Shanahan family, that's a 40-carry game. And I looked up until the last possession, they had under 30 carries. It's like it shouldn't have been a 1-to-1 ratio of passes and rush attempts. It should have been heavily as you got control, and your defense is dominating. It's like, it's very in vogue to go for it in the NFL all the time. And listen, I admire Dan Campbell. That's his style. He never wavers from it. He's pedal to the metal, 100% down. They're going for it 100% of the time. Even sometimes you're like, Dan, I'd probably just kick the field goal here. He's like, fuck it, go for it. And it's like, that's just part of the deal. And in fairness to him, he's been consistent with it for years. Mike McDonald, and they mentioned this on the broadcast, ain't with that. Well, what is Mike? He's a defensive coach. And what does Mike have? A fantastic defense. Also, who's he playing? Kind of an inept offense. Why would you be overly aggressive on fourth down? Punt, kick field goals, play defense. Try to score on me. Bet you can't. But the easiest way they can get back is turning the ball over. And I can imagine tonight Mike McDonald's like, God, I almost called him Gary. Is it Clint? The Kubiak son was just, I thought he was bad in the second. I thought it kept getting worse. And I get it early on. Jackson Smith and Sam Darnold have like a Montana Rice connection right now. I saw a stat that Jaxson Smith and Jigba has 5 games of over 100 yards, which is tied for second most in franchise history. If he has one more game, that'll tie the record with Steve Largent in 1979. Now, I would say the history of Seattle teams don't exactly have the Randy Mosses and Jerry Rices and Terrell Owens playing for them. But still, like, this guy is going to break a lot of records for this franchise. He looks like a dominant force. But it felt as the game was going like, you don't need to force feed this. It worked. You got your yardage. You got your points. Now let's just sit on it and let's bleed him dry. And on the flip side, and listen, I'm not off Kubiak. I think he is a talented offensive coordinator, but I think tonight's one of those where if you want to, and they were a team that I sprinkled a little to win the division at 5-1, and they clearly have the defensive talent. Their quarterback's pretty good. Their skill guys, I mean, their running backs are really good. Horton to go with Jackson Smith. Like, they got skill guys, and their coaching staff's excellent. Their head coach, if Mike was an offensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, instead of a defensive coordinator, I've been saying this for a couple years now. We would talk about him like the media circle jerks Kevin O'Connell. Like, that's how, and that's not a shot at Kevin O'Connell. I mean, he's earned it. Like, he's a really good coach, but offensive guys get put on a pedestal. I mean, look at Sean, look at Kyle, look at LaFleur. I mean, Kevin O'Connell. It's just look at the two old famous guys, Andy and Sean Payton. They're held to a higher standard than defensive guys. They just are. And because Mike's like this younger guy, but he's a dominant defensive coordinator. There were stretches tonight where he's calling blitzes and bringing pressures. In fairness to CJ, I don't know if like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning would have understood where these pressures are coming from. He is elite at his job. So to me, if Kubiak in those type moments can get a little more conservative, like Pops, and play to his head coach's strength, I mean, that team, the ceiling's pretty high. I mean, the speed in which they have on defense, obviously we know how good their home field advantage is, even though somehow the Niners won their week one. And clearly the NFC West now, I mean, it's a three-horse race. Now, I don't know if the 49ers can continue this. They're missing so many bodies, but all three teams are 5-2. The coaching is elite. The culture is elite. You play those teams, you better buckle your chin strap. Now, the Texans, same thing. D'Amico from Kyle, Kubiak guy, badass. Look at their defense. The Texans' defense is top-notch. I mean, Will Anderson is a certified ass kicker. Their defense is excellent. Their offense, though, is a tough watch. And we've talked about this with some of these coordinators that we don't know that well, and we start seeing them call plays. We're like, something's off. Certain people are just not good at their job, right? Because some people are just lazy. They don't try. They don't care. Most times in football, like in that world, in coaching, it's not because guys aren't trying. It's not because guys don't study. It's not because guys, honestly, if you just gave them a pen and got to the whiteboard, I bet the Texans offensive coordinator, Nick Haley, who was with Sean McVay for a couple years, but really is a Patriot guy, would be really impressive. I bet he really knows ball. But when it comes to these games, you're watching it and you're going, what are you doing? Now, in fairness, his offense has some limitations. Their personnel on the offensive line is not great. I mean, they're playing their running backs, major question mark because of some injuries, right? Nico Collins gets hurt in the game. Listen, he's not playing with a full deck. But there were stretches tonight. There was a 3rd and 4th down stretch early in the second half where he called two basically like outside off tackle runs that got absolutely destroyed. It's one thing, listen, you want to call it one time on 3rd down, I'm not going to fault you. But then to basically just call the same exact play again and get the same result, it was insanity. And he did it again late in the game on the goal line. Luckily, one of their guys like false started, so they got a free play. It was absolutely housed because at the point of attack, their offensive line is getting worked by a fantastic front. Seattle's front, led by Leonard Williams, all their DBs are physical. Their linebackers are flying downhill and just triggering on the A and B gap and just coming to crack skulls. It's like, this is not going to work. Now, and if you're not comfortable calling a quarterback sneak, which Orlovsky wanted him to call, Orlovsky's like, do the Drew Brees and leap over. It's like, well, is CJ comfortable doing that? I get it. In theory, it makes a lot of sense, but if he's not comfortable doing it, you can't do it. But you cannot call these runs between the tackles in these short yardage situations. My mother, who's probably asleep, could tell you this is not going to work. And he just kept calling them. It was baffling. Now, you go, what are you supposed to call? I don't know, but you cannot call that. I understand you have limitations. You might as well just hand them the ball and say, this is not going to work, so here, take the ball, and you guys bring your offense on the field. And we've seen this now around, like they made a change at offensive coordinator because Bobby Slowick was a disaster, and it looks the exact same. You could argue it looks even worse. And it's concerning because, I think what you feel pretty good about if you're John Schneider is you paid a lot of money, right? You won the move. You got rid of Geno and you got Sam Darnold. That is a massive upgrade, right? But then once you give Sam Darnold the money, you're like, okay, are you going to play at a high level? And you're watching him, you're like, this is a Pro Bowl level guy. So you feel really good about that. You got this guy under contract who is going to be in the mix as long as he stays healthy for the next couple of years in our scheme to be a Pro Bowl player. You watch CJ Stroud, who, how could you not have really loved him as a rookie? You go, we got this shooting star, we got this rocket ship. And now for last year and however many games this year, 6 or 7, you're going, what are we supposed to do? Well, I know what we're not doing based on what we're seeing. And I'm not blaming it all on him, but I've seen it happen in other organizations. We're not paying you after this year. So I don't want to hear from your agent expecting $200 million because that's an immediate hangup. Now, I'm not saying we're giving up on you, but this thing has just gone. And listen, CJ's still pretty talented, and he made a great play late in the game, keeping a play alive, and he definitely has the physical characteristics. But you watch on certain plays, which again, I do think you start losing your confidence as a young quarterback. Which how would you not when you're constantly getting fucking hit? If you get hit over and over, you can't even think straight. And I think that he's just getting peppered so many times last year and a half, it's hard to even judge him. But now you're in the situation to be like, well, is this actually our guy? He clearly is not going anywhere next year, but it's just one of those questions now that's out there of like, we're not making the playoffs. We're 2-4. We don't have the offense to rattle off a bunch of wins. And our defense couldn't be much better. I mean, it's a dominant defense. It's elite. It's like a championship. If you gave a good offense to that defense, you'd be like, they're a Super Bowl contender. That's why, listen, I'm wrong. I am. Sometimes you go on heaters, and sometimes you just go on cold streaks, and that's what I'm on from a gambling perspective. I'm just giving money away. And I had a couple parlays, and I said it to start the season. I anchored it to the Texans winning the South. That ain't going to work because they're not winning the South. The Colts are winning that with ease. But a huge reason that they're in this conundrum is their offense is atrocious. The personnel with their offensive line is just not good. And obviously, when Nico goes out and they lose Tank last year to a major injury, their skill position is just not explosive enough. I mean, you watch the previous game, the one that kicked off earlier, it's like there's way more explosive players in the Tampa Detroit game. That's what the offensive skill guys are supposed to look like. And you just wonder, like, there's going to be an offseason. You're going to fire your offensive coordinator again. You know, Mike McDaniel is a guy that D'Amico worked with in San Francisco for years. Would feel like that would make a lot of sense, but Nick Caserio, who is, kind of the boss. I mean, a big reason they bring in this dude from, that used to work at New England. There's some cohesion there. They know each other. So how much juice does D'Amico have? It's just everything's just a little off kilter right now, and it all falls on the offense. Like the defense ain't the problem. Derek Stingley, Will Anderson are not the issues. Now, I'm not saying CJ Stroud is the issue, but he's part of the package with the offensive coordinator, with the personnel people, with the scheme. It's a nightmare. And that game, how it was as close as it was, I don't know. Probably the turnovers, right? What, 4-1, and multiple turnovers in the second half by Seattle. But like, I think you play that game 10 times, especially in Seattle. I think Seattle wins it 9 times. I think it would take a miracle. It takes 4 or 5 turnovers for Houston to win that game. I think that's an awful mismatch because if you have a good defense, Seattle or Houston's going to be in a lot of trouble. And in fairness to Houston, they got kind of screwed because I don't get on, when the schedule comes out, I don't make that big a deal with it. But once you're in the season, you kind of feel a flow to this. To make a team that is, I've never flown from Seattle to Houston, but I Googled it tonight. It's a 4-hour flight. So by the time that they will get on the charter and probably take off, it'll be close to, my guess would be 12:30 to 1 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Well, it takes 4+ hours to get from Seattle to Houston, and there's a 2-hour time change because I'm pretty sure Houston's Central Time Zone. So you're talking about them landing at 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Well, they play the 49ers on Sunday. So the 49ers, who had a night game the previous night, were at home. They've slept. They had a normal work day today. And the Texans coaches are going to be absolutely fried by the time they land. They're going to have to go right to work. So the scheduling gods did not throw the Texans a bone, making them play this double. Listen, Monday Night Football, sometimes you get home late. It's part of the deal. Typically, the game, they would be in the air right now, right? But because of this doubleheader, you don't even kick off till a little after 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I can't even speak. It's so late. But they did get royally screwed on that. So big win by Seattle, and I think Seattle. I think they're pretty good. I really do. It comes to the offensive coordinator just being a little more conservative, and just relying on the run game. They're gonna be a tough out because defensively and that scheme and that coaching, it's pretty impressive. Speaking of the first game, I've never been that bothered by the transfer portal. And I think a lot of the way that we discuss it is based on college football, right? Players and coaches and people bitching and people complaining or people celebrating it or however, from a college lens. I want to look at the transfer portal from an NFL lens and from an NFL GM and coaching perspective. I actually think it's the best thing that's ever happened in the scouting community. And I think it's really benefited a lot of players. And Jahmyr Gibbs, who was by far the best player in the Tampa Lions game, directly benefited from the transfer portal because he went to Georgia Tech his first 2 years and he was good. But then the transfer portal existed and he transferred to Alabama. And he had multiple huge games in the SEC and he ended up getting drafted 12th overall by the Detroit Lions. And let's remember, when they drafted him, a lot of people thought they were crazy. And if you just look at his stats, it's not like he was rushing for 1,500 yards a year at Georgia Tech. And even his year at Alabama, I don't even think he ran for 1,000 yards. Now, he could catch the ball, so he was a versatile player. But, like, it was much more of a projection. But think how much easier it was to project a player at Alabama than it was at Georgia Tech. And this isn't Brent Key, Georgia Tech. This is like 2019-20 Georgia Tech. So this is a team that, I promise you this, if the transfer portal hadn't existed and he had just had to ride out his time at Georgia Tech, Jahmyr Gibbs not only isn't the 12th overall pick, he's not a first-round pick. No freaking way. And I think sometimes the transfer portal for the guys that go to bigger schools, that leave a smaller school, go to the bigger school, they can shoot up like a rocket ship. Because when you transfer to some of these SEC schools or these Big Ten schools, you're just playing in bigger games. More people are watching it. There are more scouts in attendance. They are being more highly dissected in draft meetings, in lead up to the combine, in lead up to the pro day, when the coaches get involved. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a great example of a guy that and might have been one of the truly first big explosive risers from making a move in the portal. And you watch him tonight. I mean, he is just a spectacular talent. Uh, I've always said, like, the last thing you need as a running back, like, you don't need Jahmyr Gibbs' high end speed to be a great player at running back. You don't need to be a 4.3 guy. You don't need to be Adrian Peterson. Frank Gore probably ran a 4.6. You can be an exceptional running back and not have David Montgomery. You don't need great top end speed. But if you have it, you can be a major problem. And we saw last year with Saquon Barkley had, what, 6, 7 runs of over 60 yards. And you saw tonight Gibbs, like, that thing, opens like the Red Sea and he's just out the gate. And when you're that fast, no one is catching you. And I would imagine beside Jameson Williams, there's not a guy on the offense faster than him. And he's just that pick, like watching them tonight. And I think I said this last week. There is not a better group of skill players in the NFL than the one the Detroit Lions have. When you factor in their 2 running backs, their tight end, and their 2 receivers, and you could argue 3 receivers, it's the best group in the league. And their quarterback's pretty damn good. Now, he has some limitations. He can't move. He's not going to be scrambling around like he's Sam Darnold or CJ Stroud. But if you can protect him, which they kind of can, you're going to get sliced and diced. And honestly, they weren't even that good on offense. The story of the game is the defense, and we'll get into them in a second. But it hits me every time that it's Monday Night Football, and this team's now 5-2. I don't think we give Dan Campbell enough credit for resurrecting a franchise. You can't even resurrect something because it never was. I mean, the Detroit Lions were the biggest joke franchise of the last 30 years. No team lost more in the 2000s and the 2010s than the Detroit Lions. And he hasn't just turned them into a good team. He's turned them into a league power. like they have as good of a chance as any team in the NFC to be in the NFC Championship. They have as good a chance, you would say, watching them as any to be in the Super Bowl representing the NFC. Obviously, their big variable is health, and this is back-to-back years. I It kind of hit me tonight. I think one similarity that, I think Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers really deal with this. I think when you're a run-heavy team and you have a coach who preaches physicality in practice, these guys, the rules are not on your side, so it's not like you build up the calluses. And I do wonder if the physicality that you have in practice and the games just kind of leads to guys dropping like flies, because the Lions, a lot like the 49ers, it's just every game, guys just on the ground, guys injured, random guys up. It's pretty crazy. But a lot like Sunday night with a mash unit, and even Troy Aikman said tonight, you could tell Troy Aikman was in just had nothing but like admiration for what Kelvin Shepard and the effort that the Lions' random defensive players were doing. And we have seen this back to back years now. And this is where Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit. One thing I've always said about Jim Harbaugh, hires really good coaches, because at the end of the day, like, he's not Mike Shanahan. He's not Todd Bowles. Like, he's not calling any of the plays. He's a leader, and his best ability, like, to lead is to put guys in position to run the offense and the defense. And he's always been really good at that, going back to like San Diego, Stanford, the 49ers. And one thing Dan Campbell has proven now, like, Johnny Morton's been pretty good. You can't really dispute it's I don't want to say he's the next Ben Johnson because he's much older, but it hasn't been that big of a drop off. And tonight, like, they were a little off, but I would say over the course of the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've been good on offense. But defensively, to lose Aaron Glenn, who clearly is having some struggles in New York, don't blame him, most people do, is to watch essentially the same guy, because Kelvin Shepard, former player. Remember, Dan Campbell said when he was coaching in Miami and Kelvin was a player, he's like, this guy's going to be a fantastic coach, to identify those guys, to then hire those guys, and then to start them low and build them up and then put them in a position where, because defense is really about two things, right? You got to understand the schematics of it, right? Vic Fangio, Bill Belichick, like, really understand the detail, especially in this day and age, playing the offenses that all the officiating and the rules are on their side. The league wants to see points, so you're at a huge disadvantage. So from a detail standpoint, like, you got to be every bit as dialed in on the X's and O's as the offensive guys. But then you kind of got to be a crazy motherfucker and be a little off your rocker. And there's a motivational element to defense that there just really isn't with offense. Offense is much more cerebral, maybe with the offensive line, but the offensive unit as a whole, it's not nearly the same. And that's an element of motivation, of personality, that they're kind of the same, right? Most high level defensive coordinators and defensive guys are pretty intense dudes. And to go from Aaron Glenn to this has been really impressive. And Dan Campbell deserves a lot of credit, because him and Brad Holmes took just, a trash franchise, an irrelevant franchise. Even Troy Aikman mentioned tonight, he's like, it's crazy now. We have done these last couple years multiple Monday night games. For years, I never touched this team beside on Thanksgiving. And now they are just a stalwart of, like, you need a big game, throw the Lions in there, especially at home, and they do not disappoint. It feels big. Their team pops. The talent on the roster. I mean, this goes back to the GM. Done a fantastic job. I mean, we know about their offense. Defensively, Aiden Hutchinson is just an awesome player. Jack Campbell had a nice play tonight on coverage. They've just done a really good job, and they're obviously missing a ton of guys. Branch suspended because of he attacked Juju last week, but he'll be back. He's a baller, and I'm just really impressed with the Lions and everything they got going. And there's not much for me to say about Tampa. Like, they were bound to have a bad game. Pretty devastating. Mike Evans, who I had to Google his contract, he signed a 2-year deal 2 years ago, so he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. to come back from the hamstring injury and to break your collarbone and get a concussion on the same play. Uh, the way he was laying down for a long time, you knew like this is not good. And obviously, the information coming out that it's 6 to 8 weeks and just a bad deal. And a lot of people asking me, you think he's played his last game as a Buck? I don't know. I mean, the collarbone's not a career-ending injury, but you start having some of these hamstring injuries, concussion, collarbone. You've made enough money. You've won a Super Bowl. I could see him coming back to Tampa on like a 1 year cheaper deal. I have a hard time seeing him finish somewhere else, but that was tough. And Tampa's another team, a lot like the Lions, a lot like the 49ers. Like you can just only have so many injuries. Eventually, it's like, what's going on here? And you just run out of juice. And typically that happens on the road. And that's what happened tonight. They just looked off. They just were not good. And I would say that not that big a deal. It's time to rally the troops. And luckily, you're in a division with. I saw a clip today of Raheem Morris on a big third down last night. They had 10 guys on the field. It's like that's a team that you have to worry about in your division. That team, Carolina Panthers, feisty squad, but I don't think Tampa's losing sleep over them. And obviously the Saints are terrible. So listen, Tampa, bad game, but when the dust settles, gonna be okay. A couple other things. Dre Greenlaw got suspended. He missed, basically got injured. I think he got injured in the offseason. Then he got injured, I think, again in training camp with the quad. And he has been out the entire season up until last week, where he looked pretty rusty. And at the end of the game, when they kicked the game-winning field goal, he like beelined it to the referee, started screaming at him. And I didn't see this. I guess in Bronco land, maybe that moment had gone viral by a guy that covers the team had like filmed it. And then today it was announced that he's been suspended for a game for verbally attacking a referee. To me, unless you said like, I want to murder you and your entire family, I've said this for a long time. I have a really hard time in professional sports if I'm swearing at you, even if it's not like, you could argue it's not appropriate. Yeah, there are a lot of inappropriate things that happen in pro sports. And I think there better be a very distinct line that has to get crossed for you to suspend and dock a game check away from me as a player. And I know that he is, they're contesting it with the NFLPA, but I got to know what is specifically said to feel comfortable going, yeah, you deserve to be suspended. I got no problem. Listen, we got to have some rules and regulations and some discipline. You can't just be attacking referees. Totally understand it. It's like anytime you hear an NBA coach, like, I'm going to get fined here, but I'm going to go in on the referees. It's just part of the game. $20,000 fine, whatever. Even though I think we just throw fine numbers around. I just dock them 50 grand. Oh, Jonathan Gannon, 100 grand. Like, this is a lot of money. This is net income, not gross income. So whatever you're taxed on, then they take it away from that. Like, I think a lot of these fine systems, players, coaches, is batshit crazy. But unless I hear something, and listen, it takes a lot to offend me, it better be pretty egregious to suspend a guy and dock him a game check for a game. If I was Dre Greenlaw, I'd be posting what I said, trying to get the public on my side. A couple other quick things. Brandon Graham is going to return. At least all signs point. I'm recording this at 11 o'clock at night on Monday night. The Eagles are desperate for a little outside pass rush, playing the Giants, Jaxson Dart. All signs point to Brandon Graham coming back. I can imagine Brandon at home with his family. I think he's got a couple young kids, probably a little bored. And he goes, well, wait, Jeffrey and Howie just called me. They said they'll pay you 500 grand a game, or whatever, prorated $10 million. Like, well, I'm just not doing that much else. Now, what I would wonder is, what has he been doing physically? I would guess, like most, young, healthy adults, he's working out. But there's a big difference, like going to the gym, getting a little pump, getting an elliptical, getting a little walk on a 10 incline, and like training to get after offensive tackles. So if he has specifically been training over the last, I don't know, 6-ish months to just maintain his not even just his physical stature, but just my NFL pedigree, I'd be impressed. And I have a lot of respect for him if his training has maintained the same level of intensity as it would have over the course of his career. Because I'd be hard pressed. You just retire and you just maintain that training. Maybe he's just a physical freak, but he is an older player. Shows you they're a little desperate. And last but not least, it's a tough time to be a Giants fan. It's better than being a Jets fan, but it's tough. I mean, that game, uh, obviously, it's been one of the main talking points of all of the football world is the Giants blowing that game to the Broncos. I will say this. I want to, because I defended Dayball, not because I think he's like doing some bang up job. It's just, listen, you got to let the coach that handpicked the quarterback give him a little runway. If I would have told you 6 months ago that we would be close to Halloween and there's not a soul in the NFL, including the Titans, that would take Cam Ward over Jaxson Dart, you would have had a big smile on your face. Been like, are you serious? How good is this looking? And I do think we can sit here today because I saw a stat that since Jaxson Dart was inserted in the starting lineup, that the Giants are averaging over 25 points a game, and that would rank them sixth in the NFL. So, like, offensively, clearly, they are as fun of an offense as they've had in a long, long time. Even the year that they made the playoffs when they went 9-8 with Daniel Jones, didn't he throw like 15 touchdowns that year? It's not like he threw 38. It's not like he had Sam Darnold season last year with the Minnesota Vikings. So, like, if you're gonna need, and sometimes when times are dark, we've all been down in the dumps for different shit in our life, whether it's just personally, professionally, whatever. You just need to find a bright spot. And I do think the bright spot right now is, did we get the best quarterback in the draft? Did we? Because if there was a redraft right now, and listen, I'm not acting like I hated Cam Ward. I liked him. I thought he'd be a good player. I bet on them the first 3 weeks, watched them the last couple weeks. A little hard to judge, but there's no disputing. He looks terrible. He looks completely overwhelmed. It's a tough watch. Now, it could be a Jared Goff situation back with Jeff Fisher. Year two, McVay comes in and becomes a great player. So I'm not writing the guy's obituary and saying he's a bust, but it's not going well. People are getting fired. I mean, that building is in shambles. And while the Giants, awful loss, I do think you need to look somewhat optimistically to go, I think we hit on the quarterback. Have a good night.